A child's cry broke the silence before the front doors even finished swinging open. Adrian Lee froze in the marble foyer, suitcase still in hand, heart pounding against his ribs. The sound came from upstairs, from his daughter's room. He sprinted up the staircase, every echo of his shoes slicing through the stillness of the Kyoto mansion. He flung open the nursery door and stopped cold. A woman, a stranger, sat in the rocking chair, a little girl curled in her arms. Sophie. His Sophie. The child was asleep, her tiny face pressed to the woman's shoulder. The stranger hummed softly, her dark skin glowing under the lantern light. "Mr. Lee," she whispered, not startled, just calm. "Please don't wake her." "Who are you?" His voice came out sharper than he meant. "Amira Daniels, the new caretaker. I started last month while you were in Tokyo." The words didn't fit. Adrian blinked. "Who hired you?" "Your house manager," she said evenly. "Through the London agency you used before?" Adrian hesitated. He remembered unread emails, missed calls. The house manager must have acted alone. Amira's tone carried a quiet authority that bothered him. "You could have called me first." "She's been sick," Amira said, her eyes never leaving Sophie. "Fever, nightmares. I stayed because she wouldn't sleep alone. You should have called a doctor." "I did," she replied. "Twice. They said rest and warmth. Tonight, she just needed comfort." Her certainty irritated him. "You're not her mother," he said. "No," Amira answered softly. "But neither is anyone else right now." The words cut deep. Adrian stepped closer, looking at Sophie's flushed cheeks and steady breathing. For the first time in months, she looked peaceful. It should have soothed him, but it didn't. It made him ache. The last person to hold Sophie like that was his wife, gone 2 winters ago. "Give her to me," he said quietly. Amira rose carefully, placing the sleeping girl into his arms. Sophie stirred, murmuring against his chest, "Mama Mira." The name hit like a slap. "She calls you that?" "Only when she's half asleep," Amira said. "I told her not to. You should have stopped her. I tried." Sophie clung tighter to him, but her warmth felt distant, borrowed. Adrian's throat tightened. "Get out," he said softly. Amira didn't argue. She straightened, collected a small blanket from the chair, and folded it neatly. "The thermostat in her room keeps shutting off," she said. "That's what caused her fever. I fixed it yesterday." He frowned. "How do you know that?" "Because no one else did," she answered, voice steady. The service request sat unanswered for 2 weeks. He wanted to challenge her, but couldn't. She was already at the door. "Good night, Mr. Lee." Her voice lingered in the quiet after she left, along with the faint scent of jasmine. Adrian looked down at his daughter, her small fingers gripping his collar. The room was warm now, the air softer. He sat on the edge of the bed, rocking her slightly, uncertain who he was soothing, his child or himself. Outside, the rain began again, tapping against the glass walls. In that dim reflection, Adrian saw a man who could command boardrooms across continents, but could not give his own child the warmth she found in a stranger's arms. The heater clicked back on. Somewhere below, a door closed gently, followed by silence. Adrian sat there, still holding Sophie, his chest tightening with a truth he had spent years ignoring. He wasn't angry at the maid. He was angry at himself for needing her to remind him what love looked like. 620 words. Morning crept through the paper blinds in soft golden lines. Adrian woke in the rocking chair, his neck stiff, Sophie still asleep on his chest. For a fleeting moment, everything was quiet. No meetings, no ringing phone, just the sound of a child breathing. Then memory rushed back. a stranger in his house, holding his daughter like she belonged. He placed Sophie gently on the bed, tucking the blanket around her, and stepped into the hallway. Downstairs, faint music drifted from the kitchen. Amira stood by the stove, sleeves rolled, humming a tune under her breath. The scent of toasted bread and miso broth filled the air. Adrian stopped in the doorway. "You're still here?" he said, voice flat. Amira turned calmly. "Your house manager asked me to stay until you decided what to do. I didn't want Sophie waking up alone." "She'll be fine," he said coldly. Amira stirred the pot, unbothered. "She isn't fine at night. She wakes up crying for her mother until her voice gives out." Adrian stiffened. "You talk as if you know her." "I only know what I've seen," she replied quietly. "A little girl who holds her breath when she's afraid no one's coming back." The words landed deep, sharper than anger. "That's enough." Amira set the spoon down. "Understood. I'll pack after breakfast." He hesitated, something in her calm unnerving him. "Where did you work before this?" "London," she said. "I taught preschool. My husband died 2 years ago. I needed work somewhere far from everything familiar." He didn't answer. His gaze drifted to the refrigerator. A drawing was pinned there, a house, a tall man, a small girl, and a woman with brown skin between them. Above it, Sophie had scrawled in crooked letters, "My family." Adrian stared. "She drew this?" "Yesterday," Amira said softly. "She wanted to show you when you came home." He tore the picture from the fridge and folded it into his pocket. "You've been here long enough," he said quietly. Later that day, the house manager, Mrs. Ito, appeared in his office overlooking the bamboo grove. "Sir," she said carefully, "Miss Daniels may have overstepped, but the child responds to her." Sophie laughs again. "She broke boundaries," Adrian said. "She cared," Ito replied. "And maybe that's what this house needs." Her words stayed with him long after she left. Care, a word that felt out of place in a mansion built on order and silence. That evening, Sophie pushed away her dinner. "I want Mama Mira," she whispered. Adrian knelt beside her bed. "She's gone, sweetheart. You have me." Sophie's voice was small. "You're always gone, Daddy." The sentence hit harder than any accusation. He tried to smile. "I'm here now." She turned to the wall, silent tears soaking the pillow. Adrian stayed until her breathing slowed, feeling more helpless than he ever had in a boardroom. Past midnight, he wandered downstairs. The kitchen light glowed faintly. On the counter sat a folded note with his name in neat cursive. "Mr. Lee, thank you for the chance. Sophie reminds me of my own child. Some nights, all they need is someone who doesn't leave." Amira Daniels, he read it twice. The last line echoed in his chest. Someone who doesn't leave. Rain began again, soft against the glass. Adrian stared at his reflection, a man surrounded by wealth yet starved of presence. Upstairs, Sophie murmured in her sleep, "Mama Mira." He closed his eyes, realizing the bitter truth. The woman he'd dismissed so easily hadn't overstepped. She had filled the silence he'd created. The house felt emptier after Amira left. Her quiet footsteps, her humming in the mornings, even the faint scent of jasmine had vanished. Adrian told himself that was good. Order restored. But every room felt like an echo chamber, reflecting everything he didn't want to face. By the third night, Sophie stopped speaking altogether. She ate in silence, nodded when spoken to, and stared through him with eyes too calm for a 6-year-old. Adrian tried everything: new toys, storybooks, a weekend trip to the Kyoto Aquarium. Nothing broke the stillness. She laughed only once, at a dolphin splash. Then the sound died almost instantly. He found her one evening in the garden, under the plum tree, sitting on the damp grass with her mother's photo in her lap. Her hair was tangled, her shoes soaked. "You'll catch a cold," he said gently. Sophie looked up, her voice a whisper. "It's okay. Mama Mira used to brush my hair here." He froze. "What did you say?" "She brushed my hair when you were gone. She said this tree was lucky because it still blooms, even when it's lonely." Adrian didn't know whether to be angry or ashamed. "You shouldn't be outside at night," he said, lifting her into his arms. She rested her head on his shoulder, but didn't hug him back. The weight of her distance was heavier than any silence. That night, he sat at his desk, staring at the folded note Amira had left behind. He'd read it too many times. Some nights, all they need is someone who doesn't leave. He typed an email to the agency asking for a new caretaker. But before hitting send, he hesitated. He deleted it, closed the laptop, and poured himself a drink instead. The whiskey burned, but not enough to drown the ache. The next morning, he called Mrs. Ito into his study. "Find out where Ms. Daniels went," he ordered. Ito blinked. "You dismissed her, sir." "I know," he said. "Now I'm undismissing her. She mentioned Osaka when she left. A friend from the embassy. Call that friend." "I can try," Ito said carefully. "But maybe, before you bring her back, you should ask why she mattered." He didn't respond. Pride and guilt twisted together in his chest. Later, while packing Sophie's lunch, he found another drawing folded beneath the bread box. A child's sketch of a tall woman holding hands with a smaller figure. Beside it, written in green crayon, "She helps me breathe." Adrian sat at the table for a long time, holding that paper like evidence. That afternoon, Sophie had a nightmare. The nanny he'd hired temporarily couldn't calm her. Adrian rushed upstairs and found the girl thrashing, gasping. "Mama Mira," she cried. He gathered her in his arms, rocking her until she quieted. Her fingers clutched his sleeve, her voice barely a whisper. She said, "When I can't breathe, I should count the stars until I find her again." Adrian looked out the window. Through the bamboo leaves, faint pinpricks of light flickered above Kyoto. He whispered, "Then count with me." "1," Sophie said sleepily. "2?" Her voice faded as she drifted back into sleep. Adrian stayed by her side until dawn, realizing the stranger he'd pushed away had left traces everywhere. In his daughter's habits, her hope, even her healing. The next morning, he stood by the window, watching mist roll through the garden. He didn't know how to fix what he'd broken, but he knew one thing. He couldn't stay silent anymore. He picked up the phone and dialed the number Mrs. Ito had found scribbled on the back of an envelope. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered, quiet and cautious. "This is Amira." Adrian hesitated, his throat tight. "It's Mr. Lee. I think I owe you an apology." Silence stretched over the line so long that Adrian thought the call had dropped. Then Amira's voice came, calm but guarded. "Mr. Lee, I wasn't expecting to hear from you." "I wasn't expecting to call," he said quietly. He stood at the window of his study, watching rain smear the view of the bamboo grove below. "You were right about the vents, and about a few other things." Amira's tone softened. "How's Sophie?" "She's quieter," he admitted. "She hardly eats, hardly talks." He hesitated, lowering his voice. "She misses you." A pause. "Children adjust?" Amira said, eventually. "No," he replied, sharper than intended. "She's not adjusting. She's fading." Her silence was steady, heavy with meaning. "Maybe she's mirroring someone," she said at last. Children absorb what we give them, even silence. The words hit him harder than he expected. He swallowed, trying to hold his temper. "I'd like you to come back." "Mr. Lee," she said gently, "I can't fix what isn't ready to be fixed. You and your daughter need each other, not another stranger." Before he could respond, the call ended. The empty click echoed through the room. By evening, the storm outside had turned violent. Adrian paced the kitchen, unable to focus. The smell of rain and cedar filled the air, the sound of thunder shaking the walls. Everywhere he looked, there were traces of her. A mended curtain tie, Sophie's drawing still tucked behind the fridge magnet, the blanket she'd folded with precision. He poured a drink, but didn't touch it. Mrs. Ito found him standing in the dark. "Sir," she said, "forgive me, but maybe you should listen to what she told you." "What did she tell me?" "That Sophie doesn't need perfection. She needs presence." He didn't answer. Lightning flared outside, followed by a loud knock at the front door. It wasn't thunder this time. "Sir," Mrs. Ito called, "come upstairs now." Adrian ran, his heart slamming in his chest. Sophie's room was chaos. The temporary nanny stood near the bed, crying, "She won't wake up. She's burning with fever." Adrian knelt beside his daughter. Her small body trembled, skin clammy and hot. "Sophie," he whispered, shaking her gently. "Daddy's here." Her eyelids fluttered, lips cracked and pale. "I want Mama Mira," she murmured weakly. His throat closed. "She's not here, sweetheart. You have me." Sophie's voice broke into a whimper. "You don't stay." The words struck like a blade. He pulled her close, feeling her heartbeat falter against his chest. "I'm here now," he whispered, almost pleading. "I won't leave." When the doctor arrived, he checked her vitals quickly. "It's exhaustion and emotional strain," he said grimly. "She needs stability and rest. She's frightened. Whatever's wrong in this house, fix it before it breaks her." Adrian stood motionless as the man left. The mansion felt hollow, every expensive thing useless. For the first time in his life, he couldn't buy his way out of a problem. He pulled out his phone, stared at Amira's name, and hit redial. She answered immediately. "Mr. Lee?" His voice cracked. "She's sick. The doctor says it's not just fever. She's scared, and she keeps calling your name." Amira's breath hitched. "I'll come." "You don't owe me anything," he said hoarsely. "I'm not coming for you," she replied. "I'm coming for her." The line went dead. Adrian lowered the phone slowly, every muscle trembling. Outside, the rain softened to a whisper. For the first time in years, he felt something loosen inside his chest. Not control, not pride. Something fragile and human. The front gates opened before dawn. Headlights drifted across the courtyard as a small car rolled to a stop. Adrian was already waiting by the door, shirt untucked, eyes hollow from a sleepless night. When Amira stepped out, rain clung to her coat, hair damp, face pale but steady. "Where is she?" she asked. "Upstairs," he said, voice barely more than a breath. She didn't hesitate. Her heels clicked against the marble as she climbed, swift and sure, a counterpoint to the roaring in Adrian's ears. He followed, feeling useless and terrified. In Sophie's room, the air smelled of medicine and salt. The little girl lay trembling, breath shallow, lashes stuck with tears. Amira dropped to her knees beside the bed and brushed damp strands from the child's forehead. "Hey, sunshine," she whispered. "It's me." Sophie's eyes lifted, unfocused. For a beat, confusion floated there. Then her lips trembled. "Mama Mira?" Amira smiled, a tenderness threaded with steel. "I'm here, baby." You can rest." Adrian stood in the doorway, like a figure in the wrong painting. He had watched deals rise and fall, calendars bend before his will. But none of that mattered here. Words deserted him. Amira began to hum. The lullaby was low and ancient, a song shaped by grief and hope. She counted breaths with the rhythm, pressed a cool cloth to Sophie's temples, and guided the little hands to match her own inhale, exhale. Within minutes, Sophie's shoulders loosened. The fever eased as if the storm had stepped back from the window. Adrian exhaled. "How did you do that?" "Children don't need magic," Amira said without looking up. "They need someone who shows up and keeps showing up." He sank into the rocker, elbows on his knees. "I thought I was showing up. I built this life." "Building and being are different verbs," she answered gently. "One fills rooms, the other fills hearts." The words landed and stayed. They worked in quiet tandem for hours. Amira changed the sheets, wiped Sophie's skin, measured sips of water, and told a small story about a bamboo grove that survives winter by learning how to bend. Adrian fetched towels, adjusted curtains, and sat through each jagged breath like penance. Dawn bled gold along the shoji screens. Sophie stirred, color returning to her cheeks. "Daddy?" she whispered. "Yes, sweetheart." "You stayed." "I will," he said, and meant it. When she slept again, Amira stood at the window, watching light comb the rain from the branches. "She'll recover," she said softly. But fear lingers in houses trained to be quiet. Adrian looked around, finally seeing what money had bought and tenderness had not. "I built a fortress," he murmured. What she needed was a home. Amira's jaw shifted, deciding. "When my husband died, I believed love had finished. Then a child reached for my hand and taught me the only measure that matters is presence. You have that in you. You hide it behind ambition." He nodded, shame and gratitude mixing strangely. "Teach me. For her sake, I'll help," she said. "But you lead. She needs her father's voice to be the sound that stays." He swallowed hard. "Stay a few days. Show me how to begin." For Sophie, yes. Outside, morning widened. The wet courtyard gleamed like new stone. Inside, something small but sturdy took root. A hush that wasn't emptiness anymore, but peace finding its first breath. Later, as the house settled, Adrian opened a picture book and read aloud, stumbling, then finding rhythm. Amira brewed ginger tea, hands steady, eyes kind. When Sophie stirred again, she pressed his finger to her cheek. "Don't go," she breathed. "I won't," he answered, surprised by his own certainty, surprised to believe it. The morning after Sophie's fever broke, the mansion smelled of ginger tea and sunlight. For the first time in months, the air didn't feel heavy. Adrian found Amira in the kitchen, barefoot, stirring something fragrant in a small pot. The sound of the spoon tapping the rim was oddly calming. "She's still asleep," Adrian said quietly. "She needs rest," Amira replied, not turning. "But her breathing's normal now." He nodded, lingering by the door. "I wanted to thank you." "You already did," she said. "By staying." The words disarmed him. Gratitude didn't come easily to a man used to control. "Still, I was wrong," he said. "About you, about everything." Amira looked up, eyes soft but cautious. Wrong is easy. Changing is harder. Her tone wasn't cruel, just honest. Adrian admired that, how she could speak truth without venom. "Teach me then," he said. "Tell me what I missed." She hesitated. "Start with listening." He waited silent. "When Sophie wakes, don't talk about work. Don't fill silence with money. Ask what she dreams about, and actually hear her." Adrian almost smiled. "That simple?" It's never simple, she said. Later that morning, Sophie padded into the kitchen in her pajamas. Her cheeks were pink again, eyes bright but shy. Daddy? He knelt to her height. Hey, sunshine, how do you feel? She giggled faintly. Hungry. Amira placed a bowl in front of her. Perfect timing. Rice porridge with honey. Sophie looked from one adult to the other, sensing something had changed. You're not mad anymore? She asked Adrian. He shook his head. Not even a little. She smiled, small and radiant. Then can we have breakfast together? They did. 3 people at the long mahogany table that had never felt so alive. Between spoonfuls, Sophie talked about her dreams. Flying over bamboo forests, chasing clouds, meeting a giant crane who promised to take her to her mom. Adrian listened, really listened, and something inside him shifted. Each word from his daughter felt like light finding cracks in a locked room. After breakfast, Amira cleared the dishes. Adrian offered to help. She laughed softly. You? Wash dishes? I can learn, he said, rolling up his sleeves. Careful, she teased. You might start enjoying ordinary things. Maybe that's what I've been missing. Their eyes met briefly, an understanding, unspoken and fragile. But not everyone welcomed the change. That afternoon, Mrs. Ito cornered Amira in the hallway. You should be careful, the housekeeper said. People will talk. A maid getting too close to the boss, it never ends well. Amira's jaw tightened. I'm here for the child, not the gossip. Still, Ito murmured. Men like him forget the difference. Amira turned away before anger surfaced. She had endured whispers before, at her old job, after her husband's death, even from people who pretended to care. She wouldn't let this house break her resolve. Later, Adrian found her in the garden, pruning roses. Ito spoke to you, he guessed. She worries about appearances, Amira said without looking up. And you? I worry about truth. He nodded slowly. So do I. The moment stretched, warm and awkward. Then Sophie's laughter cut through the stillness as she chased a butterfly near the pond. Amira smiled. There's your proof. He turned to watch his daughter. She hasn't laughed like that in a year. Children bloom when the air changes, Amira said softly. Adrian looked at her. Realizing she wasn't just mending his child, she was mending something in him too. As dusk fell, the 3 of them sat on the porch, the sound of cicadas humming in the distance. Sophie leaned against her father's arm, half asleep. Amira watched quietly, her expression unreadable. For once, the silence between them wasn't heavy. It was peace, a fragile truce between grief and grace. The warmth that had settled over the house didn't last long. By the end of the week, whispers began to drift through the mansion like smoke. The driver spoke too loudly on the phone. The cook lingered near the stairwell. Mrs. Ito avoided eye contact altogether. Adrian felt it in the air, soft judgment curling under every polite greeting. One afternoon, he found 2 employees whispering near the laundry room. Their voices hushed the instant he appeared. Is there something I should know? He asked evenly. The younger maid stammered, No, sir. Nothing at all. Then get back to work, he said, his tone calm but sharp enough to send them scattering. Still, the unease lingered. At dinner, Sophie hummed while drawing on a napkin. Amira helped her spell words between bites of soup. Adrian watched them, a small warmth spreading through his chest. But as soon as he glanced up, Mrs. Ito's disapproving stare caught his eye. After Sophie went to bed, Ito approached him in the hall. Sir, may I speak freely? You usually do? He said dryly. She's a good woman, Ito began carefully. But the staff are talking. They say you've become too close. You know how people twist kindness. Adrian's jaw tightened. Are they suggesting something improper? I'm saying perception matters. For your reputation and hers. Reputation, he repeated, almost laughing. Tell them to worry about their own. Ito lowered her gaze. Rumors don't care about truth, sir. That night, Amira found him pacing in his office. You're angry, she said softly. Not at you, he replied. At this house, at how fast people turn compassion into scandal. Her eyes held calm understanding. Let them talk. The only thing that matters is what Sophie sees. He wanted to believe her, but the next morning proved otherwise. As Amira and Sophie walked through the garden, a neighbor from across the hedge called out cheerfully, "Lovely sight, the maid and the master's little family." Sophie waved innocently, but Amira froze. Adrian, watching from the balcony, felt his stomach drop. That evening, tension filled the air. At dinner, Sophie sensed it and whispered, "Did I do something wrong?" "No, sweetheart," Amira said quickly. Adrian forced a smile. "You didn't, but the damage was done." When he met Amira's eyes, she looked smaller somehow, cornered by words neither of them had spoken. Later that night, she knocked on his study door. "I think I should leave for a while," she said quietly. He looked up sharply. "Because of gossip?" "You've done nothing wrong. Sometimes being right isn't enough," she said. "It's about protecting the child." Adrian stood, frustration rising. "Do you know how ridiculous that sounds? My daughter needs you." "She needs stability," Amira corrected. "If people start whispering near her, she'll think she caused it." He raked a hand through his hair. "So you'd rather run than fight?" "I'd rather choose peace," she said simply. Their eyes locked, the air between them taut with everything neither dared say aloud. Before he could answer, a small voice came from the doorway. Sophie stood there, clutching her teddy bear. "Are you leaving again?" Amira knelt. "I might, for a little while." Sophie's lips trembled. "Did Daddy make you?" "No," Amira whispered. "Sometimes grown-ups need space to fix things." Adrian's throat burned. "She shouldn't have to fix our mistakes," he said, voice low. Amira nodded sadly. "No child should." Sophie's tears spilled as she wrapped her arms around Amira's neck. "Please don't go." Amira held her tightly, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. Over Sophie's shoulder, her eyes met Adrian's one last time, filled with sorrow, but also quiet strength. "Take care of her," she said. And then she was gone, leaving behind a silence that no rumor could ever fill. The mansion returned to silence after Amira's departure. But it wasn't the calm kind. It was hollow, echoing through every hallway. Adrian had once loved quiet. Now it gnawed at him. He could hear the emptiness in Sophie's small footsteps, the way she no longer hummed when she played. The house felt bigger, colder, like it was punishing him. Sophie barely spoke. She picked at her food, refused the piano lessons she used to enjoy, and spent long hours in the garden, drawing with the same gray crayon. Adrian tried to distract her. New toys, new tutors, even a plan for a trip to Tokyo. Nothing worked. One afternoon, he found her sitting under the old plum tree Amira used to brush her hair beneath. She was holding a folded piece of paper. "What's that?" he asked softly. "It's from Mama Mira," she whispered. "I found it in my drawer." Adrian sat beside her. The paper trembled in her small hands. The message inside was short and written in careful, slanted handwriting. "Be brave, little one. You have a big heart. Keep it open." Sophie traced the words with her finger. She said, "I have a big heart, but it hurts." Adrian felt something twist inside him. "Sometimes big hearts hurt because they feel too much," he said. "Then why did she leave?" He had no answer. "Because grown-ups don't always do the right thing," he admitted. "Then fix it," she said simply. Her words stayed with him. That night, he opened the folder of Amira's notes, the ones she'd written about Sophie's habits, her bedtime songs, reminders about the heater vent, and favorite storybooks. Every line glowed with care. Each word reminded him of the warmth he'd pushed away. By the fifth night, guilt had replaced sleep. He sat in his office, staring at the empty fireplace. Finally, he called Mrs. Ito. "Do you still have the agency's number for Miss Daniels?" She hesitated. "I do, sir, but she's no longer in Japan. I believe she went back to London." "Then find her," Adrian said firmly. Ito frowned. "If she returns, sir, make sure you don't send her away again." He nodded, unable to meet her eyes. Later that evening, he opened a leather-bound journal he hadn't touched in years, his late wife's. Inside, pressed between pages, was a note addressed to him. The ink had faded, but her voice felt alive in every line. "If you ever forget how to be a father, look at her eyes. They reflect you, the strong parts, the broken ones. She doesn't need perfection, Adrian. She needs presence." The letter hit harder than any accusation. He realized he'd been chasing success while running from love. Silence had become his inheritance, and he'd passed it down. By morning, he made up his mind. He packed a small suitcase and came downstairs, startling Mrs. Ito. "You're leaving, sir?" "Yes," he said, buttoning his coat. "I'm going to London." Sophie stood at the bottom of the stairs, clutching her teddy bear. "Will you bring her back?" He knelt, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I'll try. But more than that, I'll bring back the dad you deserve." Her eyes filled with tears, but she smiled bravely. "Then hurry, Daddy. I'll wait by the plum tree." The flight to London was long and sleepless. Adrian stared out the window as the clouds split open beneath him, thinking how he'd spent years flying across continents for business, but never once for something that mattered. When the plane finally landed under the gray drizzle of Heathrow, he stepped into the cold air with a quiet resolve. He wasn't a billionaire chasing profit anymore. He was a father chasing forgiveness. London was gray and wet when Adrian arrived, the kind of drizzle that soaked through even the thickest coat. Taxis rushed by in streaks of red and yellow. He'd been here 100 times for business, but this city had never felt so foreign. This time he wasn't chasing profit. He was chasing redemption. The agency's office sat on a quiet street near Kensington. The receptionist blinked in surprise when he introduced himself. "Mr. Lee? From Kyoto?" "I'm looking for Amira Daniels," he said. "She used to work through your agency." The woman frowned, flipping through her computer. "Ms. Daniels resigned 2 weeks ago. She left no forwarding address, just an email we can forward messages to." Adrian exhaled slowly. "Please do." Hours later, sitting in a small cafe across from Hyde Park, he drafted an email that took him 15 minutes to write and another 30 to send. "Amira, I don't expect forgiveness, but Sophie misses you. I do too. You were right. Silence is heavier than pride. I'm in London. I'd like to see you, even for 5 minutes. Adrian." He hit send, then waited. Nothing. Days passed. He walked the city's narrow streets, searching for something familiar. Every corner seemed to whisper her name. On the third day, His phone buzzed. One unread message. Mr. Lee, if you're truly in London, come to St. Matthew's Community Center tomorrow at 2. I volunteer there. Don't bring gifts or apologies, just honesty. He reread the message 3 times. The next afternoon, he found the building tucked between a bakery and a library. Inside, the smell of disinfectant and children's chalk filled the air. Amira was there, kneeling beside a group of kids, helping them paint paper lanterns. Her laughter floated across the room, light but tired, like someone who had learned to live with sorrow. She looked up and saw him. For a moment, neither moved. Then she wiped her hands and walked over. You found me, she said quietly. I said I would. You didn't come for work this time. No, he admitted. I came for truth. Amira studied him. What truth? That I was wrong, he said. About control. About thinking love could be scheduled like a meeting. Her expression softened slightly. And what about your daughter? She's waiting under the plum tree, he said. She asked me to fix what I broke. Amira's eyes glistened, but her voice stayed steady. You can't fix people, Adrian. You can only show them you've changed. I'm learning, he said, slowly. The children called her name, interrupting the moment. Amira glanced back, then returned her gaze to him. I leave for Kyoto next week, she said. A family there hired me to consult for a childcare center. I wasn't sure if I should go back. He smiled faintly. Then maybe the universe already forgave me. Amira's laugh was soft. Don't rush forgiveness. It has its own clock. They stood in silence until one of the children tugged her sleeve. Miss Amira, we're out of blue paint. She looked back at Adrian. Can you stay a while? Help us finish? He nodded, picking up a brush. For the next hour, he sat among the children, splattering paint, laughing awkwardly. Amira watched him, her guardedness easing little by little. When the session ended, she said, If you want to prove you've changed, start by keeping promises. Don't leave your daughter waiting too long. He smiled, finally at peace. Then come with me. Let her see the promise kept. Amira didn't answer right away, but the faintest smile curved her lips. We'll see. The plane touched down in Kyoto, under a sky painted silver with morning haze. Adrian hadn't slept, not because of turbulence, but because of hope. Amira sat 2 rows behind him, silent through the entire flight. She'd agreed to return only after a long pause at Heathrow, her answer quiet but firm. For Sophie, not for you. He had accepted that. It was more than he deserved. Outside, mist curled through the bamboo hills as the car wound toward the estate. Neither spoke. The tension between them wasn't anger anymore. It was memory, heavy but alive. When they reached the gates, Amira's hand hesitated on the door handle. She doesn't know I'm coming, does she? Adrian shook his head. I wanted it to be a surprise. Her eyes softened. Surprises aren't always kind, Mr. Lee. Maybe this one will be. Inside the house, Sophie sat on the floor by the plum tree window, building a small tower from wooden blocks. When she looked up and saw the familiar figure behind her father, the blocks tumbled from her hands. Mama Amira. Amira knelt, smiling through tears. Hey, sunshine. Sophie launched herself into her arms, burying her face in Amira's neck. You came back? I told you I wouldn't disappear forever. Adrian turned away, pretending to check his phone, because the sight burned too bright to watch directly. For the first time in months, laughter filled the house again. Soft, genuine, whole. Later that day, When Sophie napped, Adrian found Amira in the kitchen boiling water for tea. "You didn't have to stay long," he said. "I know. But you are staying." "For now," she replied, "until she feels safe." He leaned against the counter. She wasn't the only one who needed that. Amira didn't look at him, but her voice was gentle. "I can see you're trying. That's a start." That evening, the three of them walked through the garden. The plum tree had started to bloom early, tiny buds glimmering in the fading light. Sophie skipped ahead, chasing the first fireflies of the season. "She laughs again," Amira said quietly. "You brought it back," he replied. "She just needed to remember joy," she said. "You gave her the space for it." They reached the pond, where the koi darted under moonlight. Sophie crouched beside the water, whispering to the fish. Adrian watched her reflection ripple beside Amira's, realizing how fragile peace could be and how worth protecting. "Do you ever regret coming here?" he asked softly. Amira thought for a moment. "Regret? No. But it's complicated. Every kindness I give her reminds me of my own son. He would have been her age." Adrian's chest tightened. "You never told me that." "Some pain doesn't belong in conversation," she said. "It just waits quietly until it finds purpose." He wanted to apologize again, but Amira shook her head. "You don't need more words, Mr. Lee. You need proof. Be there tomorrow, the day after, and every morning after that." "I will," he said. They walked back in silence, Sophie's laughter trailing behind them like a melody. When they reached the house, Sophie turned and held out her hand. "Daddy, Mama Mira, come on. The stars are coming out." Adrian froze at the word, Mama Mira, spoken without hesitation this time. He glanced at Amira, half expecting her to correct the child, but she only smiled, eyes shimmering in the twilight. "Let her call what feels safe," she whispered. He nodded. She's not the only one who feels safe again. They stood under the first shimmer of stars, the night air thick with renewal. For the first time, the mansion didn't feel like a monument to loss. It felt like home. Spring came early to Kyoto that year. The plum tree bloomed in a rush of white and pink, scattering petals across the courtyard like confetti from the heavens. The house that once felt like a mausoleum now breathed again, windows open, curtains fluttering, laughter echoing from room to room. Sophie sang as she drew by the window. Amira's soft humming followed from the kitchen, and Adrian, for the first time in years, felt the rhythm of an ordinary life. He spent mornings walking Sophie to her lessons and afternoons joining her in the garden, reading aloud from storybooks that used to gather dust on his shelves. Amira moved quietly through it all, present but never intrusive, guiding the small routines that turned a house into a home. Yet even amid the peace, Adrian sensed something unspoken in her stillness, a fragility behind her calm. One evening, he found her sitting beneath the plum tree, staring at the pond where the koi shimmered under lantern light. "You should rest," he said. "I like the quiet," she replied. "It reminds me of London at dawn, before the city wakes up." He sat beside her. "You could stay," he said softly. "For good this time." Amira's fingers tightened around her teacup. "You know that's not simple. Nothing worth keeping ever is." She turned to him, eyes reflecting the water's glow. "You've changed, Mr. Lee." "It's Adrian," he corrected. A small smile curved her lips. "Adrian? Then tell me, what made you change?" He looked toward the house where Sophie's laughter floated through an open window. "She did. You did. Losing both of you showed me how empty success really was." Amira listened quietly. "You were never empty. You were just afraid. People with power often are. Afraid of what? Of being seen, she said gently. Of being needed. Her words struck deeper than he expected. And what about you? What are you afraid of? Amira hesitated. That I'll love this too much. That one day I'll wake up and it'll be gone again. He wanted to reach for her hand but didn't. Then we hold it while it lasts. The next morning, Adrian called a meeting with his lawyers. Within a week, he launched a foundation, the Blue Crane Initiative, dedicated to supporting single parents and educators in need. It was named after the bird Sophie often drew, the one Amira told her symbolized resilience. When he told Amira, she stared at him, speechless. You built this for me? For what you taught me, he said, and for everyone like you who shows up when no one else does. Tears shimmered in her eyes, though she blinked them away quickly. You don't need to make monuments out of mistakes, Adrian. Just live differently. I plan to, he said. That evening, they celebrated Sophie's birthday under the plum tree. The staff gathered, smiling genuinely this time. Even Mrs. Ido raised a glass, her disapproval long gone. Sophie blew out 6 candles. Her wish whispered into the breeze. When Amira leaned close and asked what she'd wished for, the little girl giggled. That you never leave again. Amira's breath caught, her smile trembling. That's a beautiful wish, sunshine. Adrian watched them, the lantern light dancing across both their faces. For once, he didn't feel the urge to control or predict what came next. The moment was enough. As night deepened, Amira glanced at him and said quietly, You kept your promise. You stayed. He nodded. And I'm not done staying. For the first time, she didn't look away. The wind stirred, carrying petals between them like a silent blessing. The house, the garden, the people inside. All of it finally belonged to something larger than loss. Summer arrived gently, carrying the scent of rain and plum blossoms through the open windows. The mansion no longer felt hollow. Sophie's laughter drifted down hallways once filled with silence, and the faint hum of Amira's singing threaded through the rooms. Life had returned, quiet and steady. One afternoon, Adrian helped Sophie water the plants under the plum tree. You missed that one, she teased, pointing at a dry stem. I'm learning, he said with mock seriousness. You're the expert. Amira appeared behind them, arms crossed, smiling. You both forgot the ones near the pond. Adrian looked back. Then you'd better supervise. I supervise everything now, she said playfully, walking toward them. Sophie laughed, splashing them both with a watering can. For a moment, it felt like they had always been a family. That evening, when Sophie was asleep, Adrian and Amira sat on the porch overlooking the garden. The cicadas hummed, and the warm air smelled faintly of jasmine. He poured 2 cups of tea. Strange, isn't it? He said. That loss brought you here. Amira's eyes followed the glowing paper lanterns swaying above the pond. Sometimes loss builds bridges we didn't know we needed. He nodded. Then let's keep crossing that bridge together. Don't stay because of duty. Stay because you want to. Amira was quiet for a long time. You're asking me to build a life, Adrian? I'm asking you to let one grow, he said gently. Her voice softened. Then I'll stay, but not as the maid. He smiled, relief flickering through his chest. I was hoping you'd say that. The next morning, Sophie came bouncing into the kitchen, wearing her yellow dress. Daddy, Mama Mira. My teacher said we can bring someone special to Family Day. Can you both come? Amira froze, unsure how to respond, but Adrian answered quickly. We wouldn't miss it. At the school, Sophie ran ahead, holding both their hands. The other parents whispered at first. The billionaire father, the woman who wasn't his wife. But the gossip faded as laughter replaced curiosity. They painted paper lanterns together. Amira helped tie ribbons, while Adrian read stories to the children. When Sophie showed them her lantern, she had written 3 names on it in blue letters. Daddy, Mama Mira, Sophie. Adrian's throat tightened. Amira blinked fast, trying not to cry. Sophie grinned. Now the light belongs to all of us. That night, they hung the lantern on the plum tree. It glowed softly against the dark, swaying in the warm breeze. Amira looked up. You realize this house isn't yours anymore, she said lightly. I'm fine sharing it, Adrian replied. She laughed quietly. That might be the first humble thing you've ever said. Don't get used to it, he teased. They stood together beneath the tree, petals drifting across the porch. From Sophie's room, the sound of her laughter drifted down. Adrian exhaled. I used to think wealth meant power, he said softly. Now I think it's measured by how often this house hears laughter. Amira smiled. That's a fortune no one can steal. Then maybe, he said, looking at her. I'm finally rich. The lantern's glow painted gold across their faces. 2 people who had rebuilt love not through perfection, but through patience. The mansion no longer echoed with ghosts. It breathed with life again, warm, imperfect, real. Adrian whispered, almost to himself, Don't leave again. Amira smiled. I wasn't planning to. If this story touched your heart, tell us what second chances mean to you. Leave a comment, share it with someone who believes in love's quiet power, and subscribe for more stories of redemption, family, and hope.